obviously a stressful response, being chased promotes a stressful response. And what happens when how do you feel? What happens when you have a stressful response? What are some things that changes, do you think, physiologically? So stressful response. Yeah, exactly. Heart, blood pressure, and so on and so forth. That could happen in driving. We get consumed, the sort of road rage. We almost go into a trance state where the logical part of the brain we've talked about on the course gets shut down. Because if someone cuts you up on the motorway, on a road, you're not thinking this person could be racing to hospital, they could be giving birth, something could be wrong. Your immediate reaction in that sort of limbic response, your frontal cortex gets what we call nuanced in that respect, and it's almost shuts down. The limbic brain takes over. You've probably been in situations like that where you've been really, really furious and just you can't really think outside the box. We sort of can't think outside the box. Okay, so look at all the ways you can break that cycle, and we'll go from there. So, okay, that could promote a stress response. If you're afraid of a spider, if you're not, depends on which part of the world you've been brought up to, by the way. There's a big influence on that too. As a general rule, there are things that we act beyond proportion to the situation. So you sort of act beyond. I think we've all been in situations where we act beyond proportion to the stimulus. So, okay, and that sort of involves many things too, not just sort of like, outside influences. That could involve just general day-to-day life. Someone could say something to you, and you act beyond proportion to what they've said. An email comes through, text comes through, and that's related to a number of things. But we're going to explore ways that we can sort of regulate our levels of cortisol, which are released in stressful responses. Okay, and in my work over the years, I've sort of worked in that area, in organisation, in business, in sport, and some of the focus has been around cortisol response, and I'll explain why as we go along, how significant it is. And I mentioned yesterday the situation in business. I'll go into business, we'll talk about ways we can sort of help emotional regulation, because if you're able to be in the better place you are, the more creative you are, the more relaxed you are. To a point, you want some stress, you want some deadline, but you don't want to be dictated and determined by all these deadlines, the cortisol rush. And you get some people first thing on Monday morning, they neck 3 or 4 cups of coffee in the first hour upon waking up, and you think there's enough cortisol in the system at that time in the morning to get you going, some underlying situation. I talked about how in football, in sport, I've consulted teams. So, for example, I consult one of the biggest teams in the world around the issues they had with cortisol levels being high in players. And a lot of it was down to the correlation of Champions League football, because you play Champions League football Tuesday, Wednesday nights, and that's in the evening you play. 7:45 in the evening you kick off. And that's till about, say, the game finishes maybe let's say 9:30, 9:45. But at 9 o'clock, that's when your cortisol levels go to the lowest level. 9 p.m. at night generally is circadian rhythm at the lowest level. And it's twofold for them, because on one hand, the exercise releases cortisol, but equally in saying that the appraisal of the event. So your appraisal, the pressure you're under, you might not feel under pressure because you're excited, but still pressure. You've got to win the next round and all the stuff that goes with it. Your individual pressure. Okay, so this sort of spikes higher, and it kind of disrupts the rhythm, the circadian rhythm to a bit. It alters it, because all of a sudden, okay, your body's used to sort of like, you got the slippers on, you got a drink, you're watching, TV, but you're playing, and there's loads of people cheering, and then afterwards, if you're travelling on the plane, and sleep is the best thing we can do to reduce cortisol, one would think, but then you're on a plane and you're travelling, and it doesn't do a great deal. And the following morning, your sleep's disrupted. By Saturday, you've got to play again. Sunday, you've got to play again. You're not really in the best place to play as well as you could do, because you're on your peak performance. So there are other ways, other correlations to cortisol that can help, and they're outside my remit, like nutrition. There's correlations around that. think vitamin D, I've heard before in my conversations and dialogue with people in that field. Obviously rest and sleep. Yoga's been effective for reducing. I have a research paper that I sort of dug up from somewhere. I did a dissertation and talked about how yoga was a really effective way to reduce. I don't know about the direct correlation, of course, but obviously it's worth investigating. So, it goes to show that there are ways of means. So, sort of to reiterate, the spike's about 6 in the morning from the circadian rhythm point of view, the way we run. The light hits our eyes and it increases cortisol. Okay, because you go back to prehistoric days. The first thing you got to do in the morning is you're more open to attack in the morning. If you're a cave person, if you're living back in the day, okay, in the morning, see, that's you're most in danger. So your vision, you've got to react. Then you've got to go get food. Hunt or be hunted, so to speak. So you can see how evolutionary, and we'll go into a bit of evolutionary history in our brain tomorrow, but it sort of shows that we've got a spike. So if it goes low at 9 in the evening to 12, that's the lowest level of cortisol, then here is the highest, 6, 7, 8. They rise to help mobilize energy stores, so to get us going, okay? To get us going, it's fantastic. We get going, and also in certain situations of acute stress, they rise, and they're useful because they get you out of some tricky situations. Okay, because if there was a tiger there, okay, the last thing you want to be is just chilled and laid back and just you want to get going, and if there's a fire, you want to go for the exit. You want to have that rush. So it's useful to a point, but if that tap is running all the time, it becomes counterproductive. So 6, 7, 8, and that's why I suggested in business to change the structure, because the Industrial Revolution has heavily influenced the way we sort of have our working cycle. But that was a long time ago now. Times have changed. So some of the things I suggested, certainly in business, are why can't we structure our day differently? Okay, in the sense that to sort of work around, and obviously each individual has slightly different circadian rhythm, but all things being well, do you really want to be doing stressful work at 9 in the morning when your levels are really high? How much damn high can they go? So the reality is, for me, is maybe task prioritization. Okay, so we can prioritize tasks. So think, okay, if that's where my highest levels are, then how about I sort of prioritize my tasks and think maybe I'll deal with the stressful work when they reduce a bit, go down a bit. Maybe 11 o'clock I'll sort of handle a stressful task. Okay, perhaps in the afternoon when they start to drop again after the second spike at midday, I can do another task, or maybe a half an hour sleep, or rest, even meditation, yoga, to drop them down. At 9 o'clock in the evening, I think it's imperative that we avoid any stressful tasks because it's going to disrupt our sleep, if possible. From 9 till 12 at lowest levels. Don't watch a scary film. Okay, don't watch Halloween or Friday or The Exorcist even at that time, because it's going to seep into your head. But also, don't go on the email and sort of do stressful emails.
That's what I used to be doing in the evenings.
Yeah, it's not a good idea because you're not going to sleep very well, because it's just going to spike. This is the lowest level.
Me out.
Yeah, unless it's highly necessary. But maybe if you've got to work at that time, you choose a different thing to do at that point. Not that I recommend working at the time, but if you're playing football at that time, because you're Champions League game, then we've got to work out a way to structure our day in accordance to help the players perform best they can. So perhaps to sort of readjust things, we might do a few training sessions around, say, 8 o'clock to not be too much of a shock to the system. We might, bring in a decompression session after the game. We look at diet, maybe we get players to sleep longer. Maybe on certain days they can sleep till midday to sort of see what we're going to adjust. So things that we can look at think tank wise, but that's important because to be efficient. sort of just take my word for it. Do your research and look at the statistics on anxiety and other stuff too, and you'll see there's I'm not just saying it's correlation this, by the way, it's not, but they're through the roof. So that's one thing to think about, okay? Look at the cortisol release and think, okay, how can I structure my day in a way that I can get the best out of myself in that respect, okay? Sometimes you put the bat and ball away at night, just watch a film, enjoy yourself, just take it easy and get up in the morning and get going. But the reality is that you've got this window, say from 6 till 9. Maybe you might want to do some yoga just to balance it, or meditation, or that sort of stuff. So these are sort of key things you can do around that.
Can exercise increase your cortisol?
That's an interesting question, really. I remember reading this research paper, and the research paper I read was the way exercise would influence other chemicals in the brain, other neurotransmitters, and like serotonin, dopamine, and so on and so forth. I think it depends on the exercise. I would say aerobic exercise has less of an effect in rising it, probably stabilising it anyway. But I think heavy weightlifting and heavy activity is going to rise it. But I don't know, and this is the interesting thing, whether that release of cortisol has a similar effect to a stressful response. That's the point. And one research paper might say one thing and one the other. My suspicion is the increase in cortisol from doing exercise is still going to have an impact on us short term. Lifting the weights, the body sees as a stress, but equally you could offset that depending on what the person's training regime is. So, for example, the person would be training to do an event. But I would avoid doing weight training, by the way, at this time, from 7 till 9 with my athletes. I'd always do the weight training at about, say, 2 in the afternoon for that very reason. Because I thought it's really high anyway at that point, we're bringing it there. And you could argue, okay, when it's lower, is it a good idea to do it then? But I don't think it would lift the levels to the point in elite athletes. So it's I think individually based, but you can sort of read the literature and depends on the training. I think the more strenuous it is, the more release that is. Sport, obviously appraisal. Our interpretation of a situation, not the situation itself, causes stress. But it's a good point to think about. So rising cortisol levels are good because they release in energy release. Fantastic. You need energy. You've got to get going. So you need some cortisol. Okay. It drops in the evening amongst most people. It's never a given for everybody because we can't test everybody in the world. But we know amongst most people, 9 till 12, your lowest levels. 6 till 9 in the morning is going to be your high levels, so to speak. Okay, and we know that prolonged release of cortisol in the system is not good. So you could argue that the layers of the brain that have happened over all these years, the layer upon layer, which we'll go into a bit more detail tomorrow, hasn't evolved to the point that we can cope with chronic stress. Okay, all the literature I've read, unless someone knows otherwise, do email me, do let me know. But all the literature I've read tells me that the part of the brain, our newest part of the brain, has not evolved to the point to cope with chronic stressful responses. And that's all. Every piece of literature I've read, I haven't seen anything outside that suggests that it's great to be under constant fight, flight, freeze response. So there's a correlation for a lot of different things. Not good. Okay, so the other thing to think about is okay, we talked about how cortisol is important in the energy release in the morning, but also important in stress responses too. So if you're being chased, it's important. If you've got to do a deadline, it's useful to put yourself under a bit of pressure, but not too much pressure. And everyone's got different levels of resilience. And what's stress to one person might not be somebody else, but the danger is too sometimes you don't realise it sort of creeps up on you. Okay, so it creeps on you. Okay, we're all good so far?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we talked about this the other day. So you can look at the HPA axis that results in release of cortisol, which is input from the prefrontal and limbic system. So the feeling part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain, and the thinking part of the brain sends messages in plain English to the HPA, and that results in the release of cortisol. So your appraisal, okay, how you interpret the situation, under the radar, unconsciously, above the radar, consciously. What I mean by that, so it could be your boss looks at you a certain way. It could be you see someone at an event and they're telling you not to take their clients, and that interpretation, that appraisal, causes a stress response, cortisol. When they might not mean nothing by it, but they might mean something by it. I don't know. But you could reappraise the situation and you see it completely differently. We've all ruminated over stuff. We've all sort of stewed over stuff, okay? And then we reappraised it, rescripted it better. But equally, it could be implicit. We might not even notice it. It might be under the radar where you hear an air conditioner in the background. It reminds you of something. You hear a song in the background. Why? You see a colour, and that stirs the emotional response, and that's the cortisol response. So sort of look at as we go along. We sort of understand that part there, where how.
So when you get hormonal imbalances, it affects obviously the cortisol, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, depending on the imbalance, a number of different hormones that we have, but this specifically, cortisol is known as the sort of currency of stress. It's the stress response hormone. It's the stress response. It's what we release from the adrenaline gland when we're under significant amounts of stress, but we do it automatically too in the morning to get us going. And obviously it is from input from the prefrontal, the bottom part of the brain, and also the limbic system. They're the two main areas that the HPA axis that results in the release of cortisol. So the message. So for example, if you were to say, go for a walk at lunchtime, and you could hear someone walking behind you, getting closer and closer, and you turned around and you didn't like the look of that person, they looked a bit dodgy, it would release cortisol. You'd either run, you'd fight, or you'd freeze. Okay? Or if you heard a car swoosh past you, it might be enough to trigger the limbic system. If you'd been in a situation before where you maybe had a close call with a car, it's a sort of emotional memory. Does that make sense? So this is an appraisal, okay, of a certain situation, which signals from the prefrontal cortex or limbic system go to the HPA axis and increase cortisol. So I think prefrontal cortex, think logical brain, think limbic system, think feel. Okay, so there's a tennis match going on. For example, if you went home tonight and you heard a big bang in the kitchen, sort of 2 o'clock in the morning, the limbic system, a response, you have a limbic response, you get up, release the cortisol, and you start thinking, what could it be? Did I leave the door open? Is it an intruder? Did I leave the dishes over the edge? Like a little tennis match going on. Until you walk down the stairs. As you walk down the stairs, you sort of, is it this, is it that, is it the other? Then you see dishes on the floor, the door's locked, and I'm okay, you settle. Well, the cortisol is on the way then. Okay? And you know how you got that sort of, still, who's ever felt really shaky 3 or 4 hours after getting some bad news? Yeah. So it's flooding the system at that point, depending on the situation, how we handle it. The more stressed you are, the more we secrete. Okay? So the world we live in is not good for our brain. Our human brain, the world we live in, not the best correlation in regards to stress response Why do I say that? Because the brain doesn't differentiate between danger. The brain doesn't understand the meaning always. Because the response, if you go back in time, was to get us away from danger. Okay, get us away from the dangers that we faced, which were saber-toothed tiger, other tribe, danger, life, survival. We don't have that problem now for the most part, but what we do have, which is really important, is the stressful life that we live in. You've got to be at a certain time, certain day, bills to pay, you watch TV, all these sort of things that go on. So there's a lot of things going on in the world that sort of triggers the brain. So the world's not geared up really, I think, in the way I see it, for the brain in that respect. Would you agree? Would you think that there's some truth in that? Where if the brain, if you're going to work and you're stuck in traffic and then you've got bills to pay and you've got deadlines, you've got people bellowing down, you get this done, get that done.
More pressure in society today.
Well, I mean, there has been, but yeah, I think so.
Social media.
Yeah, well, you throw that in the mix too, yeah. I mean, that's not to say that there wasn't pressure before, there was.
No, but not as much,
But people 100 years ago, goodness me, they used to do much more difficult labour than we've got now. We've probably got it made now compared to 100 years ago. They used to haul ships and all sorts of stuff back then. So, it's all relative, but the point being that the way we've designed our system based on the Industrial Revolution in that respect doesn't always work well for the brain. That's one correlation with anxiety, I think, in my own mind, and ill health in general, in my opinion. I'm not a medical person, but from a mind point of view, the only thing I can put it down to is that we're faced with this chronic environment that we don't notice it, but it's chronic, because you've got enough to do with in life anyway. We have big events that hit us all the time, or sometimes anyway, and on top of that you've got this sort of, you could be stuck in traffic and got to get to work, and then you're logging on, and all these things correlatively have an impact on us anyway, I think. This sort of shows the increase in heart rate. I put a heart rate monitor on some.
I had that at work, at my old work. I had like a heart monitor, and then you had to wear it for 48 hours. And it just shows you your stress.
I mean this one here I used it for footballers before a game, just to show that before a game, the heart rate was as high as it was during the game at times. Such was the stress response, the nerves before the game. See, this is during the game. It's hitting up to 200 BPM. Before a game, it's 160. That's sort of in the change room, getting ready, talking, see it going up and up and up before the game. It shows you how the players and the stress. You're probably saying, what stresses the player? Blah, blah, blah. The stress, the interpretation of the game. So a bit like, say, you're going to go for a casting or an interview. You're probably up here, before a casting. Because you're appraisal of the situation. Will I get the job? Will I be judged? Will it happen? So all these things happen, see? That's what I'm saying about the modern world. We don't teach people coping strategies. At least if we're going to design this world for ourselves that we have designed ourselves, let's sort of teach people strategies. Younger the better. The younger the better. Meditation, yoga. See, 4,000 years ago they had it right. They had an idea that certain things would cause stress. So we're sort of starting to bring these things back in again now. So at least teach people young. I mean, imagine being a 17-year-old being told, if you fail the A level, you're doomed. You won't get to university. It's going to happen. It's not going to help their performance anyway. So my theory is, tell the young person, reappraise it differently. Go in there and focus on the process. Don't focus too much on the outcome. You're not doomed. You don't get through, you'll get through again next time. But the best chance you've got of getting through is just go in there and just immerse yourself in your knowledge and see what happens. So the design isn't great. It's not great, not a great design in that respect. So, but it is what it is, and it's not going to change in a hurry. So we adapt, or we just end up in situations where we struggle in life. We struggle to get through because the brain doesn't work well under chronic stress. And, we know that the modern part of the brain just shuts down. The brain you've got that makes you human doesn't work very well under severe stress. It's proven fact. It's fact. It's the way it is. So we can do imagery. bit of imagery goes a long way to reducing. Okay, and I'll do a really brief imagery process with you now, and we'll go from there. So perhaps you'd like to close your eye. And as you close your eye, just have a moment now where you decompress a bit. And just go to a place where you feel safe. Have a moment now where you feel your feet on the floor, back on a chair. Perhaps you can hear the projector in the background. Just go back to a time when you felt calm and peaceful. Just a few moments. As you see what you heard, what you felt, just go back to that time. Okay, and just breathe naturally, normally. Okay, and in your own time, in your own pace, come back to here and now if you want to come back. Okay, just something as simple as that goes a long way if you don't fall asleep doing it, to helping reduce the response. Just having a time out every now and again on your own and in the car or going for a walk and breathing and just taking it easy. One thing that cortisol does, it diverts resources away from inflammatory responses that require more immediate needs. So if you read the research, the literature, once again I mentioned I'm not a medical person, but I am a person who studied the mind for many, many years, probably for the best part 25 years. And I'd like to think that I know enough to know that, and I've read enough literature to know that cortisol diverts resources from inflammatory responses that require more immediate needs. So, for example, they're going to prioritise a response. Priority being, if you're in immediate danger, the release is going to deal with that. And that's going to drive away or have implications for the immune system, the research suggests. So who's ever experienced an infection when you feel really stressed? Or when you're under the weather, you pick up these coughs and colds, or more so. Okay, and that's not just down to that, obviously, there's many other correlations. I mean, everywhere I go at the moment, someone seems to have a cough, sort of dodging a bullet at the moment. But the more stressed you are, the more chance you've got of.
I get that when I get really stressed out.
Oh, most people do, yeah. I think that could be a correlation where.
Usually when you go on holiday, isn't it?
Yeah.
I went earlier on this year because I'd spent like 6 months planning the business and working full-time job from home and doing stuff in the evening. And we went away for a week to Derbyshire and I was ill practically the whole week.
Yeah, I mean it can happen because that's the sort of first respite you've got, sort of delayed reaction, but it's a normal process. Your body's under pressure, it secretes more cortisol. Simple as that. More pressure, more stress, more cortisol. End of story. That's just the way it is. Your body's evolved over, the evolution of the body. We're talking about millions of years of microorganism evolutionary here. The body knows what to do. It's just the body doesn't know what the meaning is. It just responds to what it thinks is the best thing to do. So you're telling the body to do an immediate restorative response. The research suggests your body shuts down the immune system. And this is a correlation to people getting coughs, colds, infections. The research suggests that the body shuts down the immune system to deal with the more impending danger. Hence, around about Christmas time, people get really stressed. They're probably more prone to all that stuff too. So the body's not expecting to deal with an acute stress, not a long-term inflammation. But your body can deal with short-term, but not long-term stress. You can deal with a blast, but not long-term, because the adrenaline gland is not a tap. You don't turn it on and off. Once you turn it on, it's on. And how do you then turn the thing off? Anybody's guess, So an increase in cortisol is good short-term because it increases plasticity in the brain to deal with things. I've got a good chance to do that task more reactively. So if I've got to hunt an animal back in the day, if you're in a tribe, you've got to run away from a tiger, it increases plasticity in the brain. So short levels of cortisol are good. They increase plasticity in the brain. Okay? It makes the brain more plastic, better able to think, better able to feel, better able to remember. I don't need to think if I see that danger again. I can just react. I don't need to weigh it up. In years gone by, the saber-toothed tiger, I don't need to stop and think, is it dangerous? I just react when I see it. The cortisol goes and I react. There's no need to stop and think. Is that if I'm trying to think the tiger's dangerous, what's going to happen to me, do you think? I'll get eaten alive. So I need to be able to think quickly. Hence my theory, not my theory, but some things that I've read and some things I thought are interesting, how we pass things down genetically. So, phylogenetically, genetically, in terms of, okay, to give out a better chance to survive. So certain things, you wonder, how do they... Because people are born sometimes, and the child, for whatever reason, there's no known exposure, picks the fear, or it kind of throws the theories out the window, where genetic is passed like an heirloom. It's passed like an heirloom down, and you've got things that, are being passed down to you don't even know, you're not even aware of. So there's a chance that epigenetics tells us that environment stimulus can help us to express genes. So we're talking like hundreds of thousands of years evolution, millions of years evolution. That's what we evolved. To be stressed, it makes sense to be able to deal with the environment better. Okay, but we didn't have, when we first evolved, the stresses that we've got now. You could argue, yes, the stresses were probably more dangerous in one respect, but the brain can't differentiate the difference. So the brain can't differentiate between the tiger chasing and being told that you're going to get fined or in big trouble by, not paying that bill. The brain just reacts the same way. You've got 10 letters that are coming in, left, right, centre, and everything else. You're under survival mode. Okay, you're in that survival mode, which is not a good place to be. You're not thinking clearly. If you want to control the society, put them in damn survival mode. Polarize them. Put them in a survival mode. Feed them with stuff that they sort of see that stifles them. And that's a great way to control society, because you see it happening all the time. Go read the newspaper at lunchtime, you will not see one good story. Watch the news, it's not one damn good story. You're trying to tell me that nothing good happens in the world? Loads of good happens, but why tell you that? Well, precisely, and that's a good way to sort of control people too, isn't it? Where you polarize them. People are arguing about stuff that, what are they arguing for? For goodness me, and they're behaving like 2-year-olds, because basically the brain's just shut down at that level. They're fighting and they're spending more time arguing on social media and politicians rather than doing something constructively. If you want to call it that, having fights on bloody social media, people that didn't even know about political parties and without realising, that's what they want you to do. Wake up, man. That's what they want you to fight against each other. Control, divide and conquer. I've got no gripe with anybody. Well, why should I hate somebody I don't even know? Done nothing to me, because I've been told not to like somebody by someone who doesn't give two hoots about me. So that's the sort of element of control, societal control. So we know on a short-term basis it's good, but on a long-term basis no good. And this is research, by the way. Long-term stress damaging neurotoxins to the brain. Okay, and it's one correlation, according to research, with mental ill health.
Do you know what? This is, sorry, just to bring myself into this, but I can really identify with this, because
a lot of people can,
I was working in an office, and a lot of people, I'm sure, can, is every day I had pure anxiety. So, it was that constant stress, and it was horrible.
I can imagine. I think we can all relate to it to a certain point, but if you throw in personality traits too, that's another correlation as well. So maybe you're going to feel even more if you're so high on the continuum of neuroticism. Then
it's the fact that it's been, I've been a PA for 3-4 years, and it's the most stressful job ever. And you're putting yourself constantly in that situation. If you're a very highly anxious person,
for sure. It's
gonna. make things worse.
Yeah, I mean, the important thing to note here is that cortisol causes more neurotransmitters to be released and increase the number of receptors that can receive that signal. So the brain is primed to act more effectively to a point. The cortisol hits different parts of the brain in different ways. Some have more receptors, some less. But the most important thing to think about, the ones that cortisol hits mainly, research suggests, is prefrontal cortex and hippocampi. They're the two main areas that the cortisol hits. And the prefrontal is our newest part of evolutionary brain, the thinking brain, what makes us human, what makes us a person. That's why some people in the severe stress, they don't act like a human being. Seriously, they regress, and then you can knock that part of the brain out. The stuff they do to other people, it's disgraceful, it really is. You think, how can you behave to somebody? How can you want to cause someone else harm? What the hell is wrong with people? Why would you want to make someone else sad for your own pleasure? It's a damn disgrace, and people need educating early. Yeah. It's horrible what people do to each other. Seriously, it's horrendous, and I think a lot of it's down to that sort of fear response, survival. You know, there's only so much for me, only so much for you. When there's not, there's plenty out there for everybody. We can all eat well, we can all sleep well, we can all be happy if we sort of use our brain more effectively rather than this scarcity mentality, you know, scaremongering people with all this stuff that they do. But that's another story for another day, but it does affect the prefrontal and the hippocampi. They're the areas it affects mainly. That's the thinking brain, the emotional center of the brain.
The emotional chimp?
Yeah, I mean, you could say the chimp paradox. Yeah, to a point. He's talking about primal structures of the brain in the chimp paradox. Not that I can comment for the author of the book. I'm sure he can explain it more articulately than I can. It's his book, but my hypothesis would be, yeah, for sure, it's the hippocampi. At least it's one structure that's older than the prefrontal cortex, but not the older structure. Because before the hippocampi, you've got other structures in the brain that have built up towards that. That's the emotional response. But you've got other parts of the brain that we can go into and I can have him discuss that have come earlier than that are more primal, like the brainstem, the hypothalamus, that control really regulate really automatic responses like physiological responses and breathing and heart rate. But this is emotion. Think hippocampi, think emotion. And think neocortex, frontal cortex, think logic. Logic and emotion. That's one way to think of it. So I think cognition and remembering as well. So the way we think, thinking parts of the brain, your appraisal, your ability to appraise a situation. Okay, think parts of the brain, remembering. Those sort of things to think about that are stung with high levels of cortisol. They've got the most receptors. And that makes sense because survival point of view, to reiterate, think about such a situation, we think about what we'd like to do at the time. Okay, we have to act quickly. We need to remember it. Okay, we need to know, are we in danger? So if you got told off at work by the boss, you see the boss again, you see the boss as a stressor. The mind gets linked to that. Okay, if you have an argument with somebody, you remember that. And we'll sort of go into that in a little more detail tomorrow, the parts of the brain, for survival point of view. Okay, so if you know you've got to get, say, your tax return done by January, or you're going to end up getting into a lot of trouble, you get a threatening letter. You don't get a letter from these departments saying, you know what, get it done in a nice way. Would it do any harm to say to someone, could you get this done? Because by getting it done, you contribute to society. We can release more money from taxation or whatever they want the money for to do this, that, and the other. No, you don't get that, do you? You don't do that, you're damned. You may as well be at the firing line. And it's horrendous, isn't it, when you think about it? Because you've got that stuff. You don't need that as well as everything else going on in your life. People have got conditions medically, they've got family problems, they've got stuff they've got to do. And then people email letters saying, you don't get this done, we're going to do this. So they use it. They use it. It's horrendous. It really is. So cortisol doesn't help other parts of the brain. It doesn't help our hearing, our balance, our eyesight, anything else. Or we probably wouldn't want it to interfere with that. So the key thing is prefrontal and hippocampi. They're the brain regions with most receptors for cortisol. Okay. So, briefly, before we do an exercise and we break away, and it's not all doom and gloom, we're going to look at ways, damaging effects of cortisol, acute rise in cortisol according to research. The brain becomes more plastic, which is a good thing in a short term. Long term, if it's high, it damages parts of the brain, the research suggests. Okay? The brain has not evolved, the research suggests, to do with chronic stress. It leads to long-term elevation of cortisol. The brain's not primed for that. We're not evolved enough to handle levels of cortisol at that level. The prefrontal cortex I mentioned before, that's what makes us, that's emotional control. The prefrontal cortex is linked to emotional control. It's what makes us human, decision making, problem solving, our sense of self, personality. If you don't have that, you eliminate a big part of the brain that makes us who we are, executive functioning. So when you get teenagers who struggle, they feel what you feel, but their brain isn't developed as well as the adult is, about till 25. 25, the brain starts to develop more, but that's why executive functioning is really important. Like, executive functioning. And people who've got damage in the prefrontal cortex struggle. They do. It could be a lesion, it could be an infection, it could be, like as mentioned, Phineas Gage, the railway worker who put it right through his head. He was still alive, but he damaged, his personality changed overnight. Okay, he couldn't nuance the behaviour that was brewing underneath in the limbic and other parts of the brain. Okay, and you see people who got damage there, they become promiscuous overnight, they become aggressive, they become all sorts, really, just out of the blue. Damage there. So we see sort of stuff, lethargy, impulsivity, all these things we see. And we can get better plasticity by doing activities that can help us in that area, for sure. So over time,
Sorry, do you mind just going back
yeah.
to that? Sorry.
So these are like if you've got prefrontal cortex injury. So if you know, obviously we all develop in different ways. You could argue they're the sort of things. You say if someone damaged their prefrontal, you'd see a change in mood. You'd see impulsivity. A lot of these things you can't control. The impulse you can't control. So obviously some people are born maybe with more power in that area of their brain, maybe through nature nurture. So the people who've got, we talked about emotional intelligence before. So if you're emotionally intelligent, you're going to have a very, very well developed prefrontal. But if all of a sudden you had an injury and you injured parts of your brain there, you had maybe a stroke or a lesion, then there's potential for that to happen. You become more aggressive, you become more provoked. So if someone spills a drink on you on a Saturday night, when you'd usually probably say that, whatever, you might get naffed off, but you're not going to but you might sort of become a lot more aggressive, struggle to control the behaviour. Okay, so it's over time it can cause damaging effects in the brain. We know that through research. Increase in neurotransmitters is good, but long problematic, and that's because the glial cells mop up neurotransmitters and try to recycle them. We keep expressing them. They find it hard to do that. It's like trying to sweep out water. Eventually, it just keeps coming in, and you're getting nowhere. Does that sort of make sense? So, glutamate is the most common neurotransmitter in the brain, which is toxic to brain cells. Okay. So for the most part, it's not a problem. It's recycled quickly. So if you sort of follow the normal circadian rhythm and you're in sync, you should be fine. That's when you sort of start disrupting that, problems arise, and that's a bit of a problem. So in chronic situations where we keep releasing glutamate, it becomes problematic. That's research. Okay, short-term helpful, long-term no good. So we see structures in the brain and damage in the brain cells, changes in neurogenesis, hippocampi. So we can see that over time it's not good. So the big picture is toxicity and damage to brain cells, in research suggests. So, in a sense, stressful lives around us cause problems in our brain in a biological sense. Chronic stress is damaging. The neurons and definite neurons. Not good. So let's do an exercise before we sort of break for lunch, which is a good exercise that you can do. It's quite useful to really get the brain working, and we'll go from there. And Okay, think of a situation that's sort of causing you a bit of stress. What a situation might be. Yeah, think of a situation that's causing you stress. Think about how you approach the situation. So think of a situation causing you stress. Think of your thoughts around the situation. Let's separate let's find a way to sort of separate the mesh behind the emotions, the behaviour, and our thoughts. Okay? Let's find a way. And my throat's a little bit dry now because I got up earlier and was giving some instructions in sport. So let's find a way to do that. So, okay, think of something that's on your mind. Maybe a stressful response. Is everyone got to say a response that's stressful? Okay, so it could be an assignment, a dissertation, setting up a business. It could be whatever it might be. You're ruminating over. Okay, let's sort of get a more balanced perspective of the situation as we go. So we're going to break for lunch in 5 minutes anyway. It's all good. Luca, can you give me and then jelly babies, please? My throat's going to go. Yeah, bring one up. Yeah, bring one. Bring me a jelly. Yeah, I need a jelly baby. No, bring one. Come, bring me a jelly baby, please. Yeah. Yeah. I've had this sort of voice thing last night. Good boy. Yeah. You can have another one. I mean, I want one, a red one.
You don't want to share?
No. Going to share with anybody else? Share. Yeah.
There's a throat sweet if you want one.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Okay, so, yeah. Good boy. There we go, he's my helper. I'm going to sort of...
Little PA.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that's the other way around. It's the other way around, I'm the PA. I'm everything. The taxi driver, PA, everything there is to him.
Have you got, is that written down somewhere?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll send you like a really good technique, a diffusion strategy. So I think we'll sort of go through it briefly
It's
before.
not in here, no.
No, this is me sort of like, going beyond, and that's cool. So we can sort of look at the a more realistic way of seeing it, the situation. So let's sort of see it more balanced. Let's stop and take a breath. What's stressing us out? What's bothering us? Let's just stop for a moment and think about it. Let's process it with the neocortex. Is it fact or opinion? Okay? What would someone else say about the situation? The bigger picture. This is a way to externalize it. Okay, what would someone else say that you admire or someone that you could speak to? And this is a way to get it out of the system, get the bad food out of the fridge. The bigger picture. What is the bigger picture anyway? Is there another way of seeing it, reframing it? What advice would you give somebody else to externalize it? Okay. Is it as big as the event seems in the bigger picture? And they're really good questions to ask that can really help. And I have got a technique that sort of stretches beyond that. I'll email it to you. It's not part of this course. It's just me sort of going the extra mile and using my experience in this area, which, with the greatest respect, I've got a lot of experience in this area, many years of experience in this area, and I sort of feel bringing that in would go a long way because it sort of gives you an idea how to mind. You deal with stuff as well, but I'll certainly email us some stuff that really can help to help from an emotional awareness point of view, intelligence point of view, in the way we process stuff, and sort of, if you sort of could do this during the day, say 11 o'clock in the morning when you're a bit stressed out, just take a seat and just, breathe deeper through your tummy, calm the sympathetic nervous system down, disconnect ourselves from that sort of stressor, regulate it, interrupt the pattern that we're in, the cycle. We talked about yesterday the curve where the trigger goes off and that goes off pretty high. We start getting overwhelmed, and then we go into that non-responsive, we start getting tired, fatigued, not good for us. So what you practice grows stronger. So practice meditation, sign up to Suzanne yoga class, will help with your cortisol. And it's a great thing that you do, and it should be part of life. It should be a big thing. given the option, you could go to a yoga class at 8 o'clock in the morning before work. We should have that. We should have a yoga person at work at 8 o'clock, do yoga till 9. Come 9 o'clock, you should be doing, breathing exercises and talking about the day and how you're going to handle the day, and having times where you sort of decompress as well. Yeah, definitely, for sure. Why not? Why not? It's a key really to just have time, because your body impacts your mind. Why not? Sometimes you take a time out. Look at the big corporations. Go out to San Francisco and see some of the big corporations out there. They've got all these sort of breakaway rooms, and you just chill out, And neuroscience, we know that you can create new pathways in the brain. Yeah, you can change perspective things. That's quite good for plasticity. New way of looking at things. You can, way you practice grow stronger. And really, the repeated experience shape our brain in a big way. Repeated practice. You look at the brains of meditators. They got more the blood flow in areas like compassion, cortical thinking, and that sort of stuff. It's more blood flows there. So you practice it. The more you do yoga, the only trouble is people are looking to do one session and be happily ever. They think it's like they're doing because they want a result. It's not just about the results; it's about ongoingly being the best you can be. When you do yoga, or whatever you do, meditation, you're going to get these big ideas, and it doesn't work that way. Flood the body with positive emotion. Another good way. Think about the emotions that you'd like to experience, and think, okay, love, gratitude. Just this final process before we break for lunch. Think about an experience that you'd like to feel. We all want to feel love, gratitude. So think, okay, what would it feel like to be loved and appreciated, and flood the body, and they're really, really good things to do, going forward. So you're breathing, have a moment to breathe deeper. Okay, calm the sympathetic nervous system down. So even if you sit there for 1 minute and just breathe through your tummy, you'll see things calm down. Okay. You calm the nervous system down, the parasympathetic, the involuntary nervous system. We kick in. That part of the nervous system kicks in. The parasympathetic kicks in when we sort of breathe deeper. Sympathetic kicks in to a response to stress, breathing deeper. Parasympathetic kicks in, we start to bring the homeostatic. And keep gratitude journal. Good too, if you operate with gratitude. So, and that sort of gives you an idea of the stress response. After the break, we're going to sort of do some more techniques around that. But I feel that, we go into that, and now you've got an awareness. Everyone got a really good awareness now, sort of what we're dealing with here. Why we do what we do. So it's not sort of plucking things out of the sky. I'm going to do this because, it's the in thing. I'm not going to sort of recommend yoga unless I've seen research behind it. Because everyone else is saying yoga, yoga, yoga. Everyone else is saying meditation. Everyone else is saying to do this, that, and the other. Now, I want to see some research behind it. And I'll read the research, and if there isn't research, I'll do my own research by qualitative questioning and what you think and anecdotally looking at things, and then we'll sort of make a case for it. And there is a strong case for yoga and trauma and stress. Huge, huge. And that's why it disappoints me. It's really sad, really. I find it really sad to think some of these things that I've used for so many years now, not because they've been mainstream, I'm happy they've been mainstream, but I'm sad because, they're mainstream in a negative way. They cause you even more. They don't sort of do what they're meant to do anymore because people are, making them. It's got to be a safe environment. If it's not safe, you're not going to respond well. So yeah. And I guess that way, I think so. Can be like that. And I think it's really important to get the balance. Yeah, we've all got to live and do well. But I think the most important thing is that you've got to find what's right for you. That's the key. Because these things are, I've always said that, say, we look at literature, say 60, 70 years ago, if you said you're going for a run, people would say you're crazy. Now these days, say I'm going for meditation. I tell people sometimes I'm going for meditation if I'm doing some work in the afternoon or just to decompress, and they're like, "Is this guy from a different planet?" And but all the top athletes are doing it. All the top business people are doing it. So why, and that's what gets me sometimes too. Some of the top executives are doing it, but they're not telling the staff to do it. They look after their own selves, but not telling anybody else. It's like have a decompression chamber, crazy stuff, really. But if you don't sort of take your own responsibility, they're not going to do anything for you. You know, you've been burnt out to a pulp, and you know, just disposed of and cast away, and that's the sort of sad thing about life. It's like, you know, we don't really make any provisions. Prevention better than cure. You know, you just think, well, if we bring this in to start with, we won't have as many problems that we've got. You would think, how much is beyond me, I don't know, but we've got enough science now to suggest that these things have a strong correlation to well-being and health, and we've got to roll them out now. The talk is over, we've got to get it done. There's no point people saying how good things are if they're not doing it. It's time for action now, in my opinion. But we'll break for lunch till 12:30. Is that okay for everybody? Have a nice lunch and have a nice rest, and let the cortisol levels drop a little bit if they've risen any higher than what they are.